Today we have Jelli as a guest. She's a vocal producer and the personal engineer for Kuk Harrell, who's a vocal producer. Her credits include Normani, Cardi B, Lil Nas X, Kehlani, Muni Long, who is formerly Priscilla Renee, right?
Yeah, but when I met her, she was Money Long.
Yeah.
That's
amazing songwriter and artist. Like her project is dope. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Backstreet Boys, which is very exciting.
As
I
a
think
90s baby, that was like a dream.
that's huge. And Anita that's a couple of the artists that you work with over the last 2 years, or
Yeah,
amongst a lot of others, I'm sure, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, Jelli got her first Grammy nom this year. Congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
That's huge.
Thanks.
Yeah. How did you get started with audio engineering, vocal production, music? Like, what's your starting?
So basically, I would say that I'm kind of a great example of somebody that it's not too late to do what you want to do in life. I was 18 years old, and at that point, all I had really done was play piano, like teaching myself triads and like singing my favorite Demi Lovato songs at the time or something.
Did you have classes as a kid?
Nah, I did some theater, so like I would sometimes take some classes at the little conservatory in my town, but like
That's awesome.
It was never my thing, theater.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like a way that I was like, oh, I kind of like music, and it introduced me to more branches of what I could do with music. So I taught myself how to start recording covers on GarageBand with the microphone attached to the headphone set, like not a microphone, but
like the earpods?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So I would sing into that, and I like messed around with I don't know, I just panned things and like figured out doubles. Anything like
Sick.
just random stuff like that, comping. Like I taught myself everything in GarageBand.
That's awesome.
And then I went to UCLA just as my plan B in case music didn't work out. And I was studying psychology there. And I just, in all my free time, I was doing music. Like I had a setup in my dorm room of a MIDI keyboard, my laptop.
Dope.
I had like $100 microphone, some AKG Perception mic,
Sick.
some random ass interface. And that's like where my happiness came from.
Yeah.
And my mom could see that. So she basically told me that we should put all the effort into music. And so I dropped out of UCLA.
Shout out to your mom.
Yeah.
For recognizing
and my
that.
dad, yeah, for sure.
And your dad, that's huge.
And I took a year because it was already too late to enter any school at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a year and just kept doing stuff myself, applied to Berkeley College of Music with the mindset of wanting to do music production and engineering, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
So went to Berkeley, interned for a group called the 11 after Berkeley. They two of them as well went to Berkeley. That's how I met them.
Cool.
And interned for them for a year in New York City after, and then decided to make the move to LA. And just was freelancing out here for a few years, getting my chops up, honing in on my skills, doing a lot of work on Sound Better.
So you came out here with something lined up already, or just by yourself?
Just with the hopes and dreams that I would figure out how to make it work.
Like many people do, because this is where it's at. This is where it happens.
And I would say the difference between like just making a whim decision versus like I knew it was going to be hard coming out here and I was ready to put in the work to do that. And I lived not like the most fun life for my first 3.5, 4 years out here. It was like a lot of people might have chosen to be happy instead of where I was at. And I just knew that if I kept working hard and kept doing what I love to do, which is at the end of the day, vocal production, vocal editing, songwriting, that if I worked hard, it would work out, was my motto.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you were able to work in music on like Sound Better, right?
Yeah.
Where you were able to work on what you wanted to do and honing in on your craft, even though the projects were challenging at times, right? But you were doing that to sustain your living and then babysitting at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. It was definitely like a lot of times you doubt yourself, like, is this ever going to work out? Are things ever going to happen? Like, I'm putting in all my hard work. Sound Better was a great a way for me to make money while I was here, just getting my skills up. And it was also kind of a better situation than if I had just entered into a bigger studio and became a runner, turned into assistant, turned into engineer. I like the path I did because I was hands-on making these people sound that didn't sound great sound better.
Yeah, literally made them sound better.
And if it weren't for the clients that were more challenging, for lack of a better word, I wouldn't have developed the skill set that I have. Like, that literally made me have to become great at it. And I had to put hours and hours into teaching myself how to figure out, okay, well, I know what it needs to sound like, but I'm not exactly sure yet. If I'm my own teacher at this point in life, you know, it wasn't like I had a mentor telling me how to do anything. It was just putting in time and hours and research and messing around and trial and error. And eventually you just build up the muscle.
That's awesome. And was it mainly vocal production you did on that? Or how did you know? Did you know that's what I want to do? Or were you just so good at it naturally? Not naturally, but were you like, oh, this kind of is what I'm excited about?
I think.
And you got hired for it a lot and that's why it happened? Or
I think I somehow along the way, and it goes back to me teaching myself how to record, and nobody was like, you should learn how to record. Nobody told me anything. I just had a passion inside of me to do that. I asked my parents when I was 18, like not having anything, if I could get a microphone and an interface and start. And I didn't know how to plug anything in anything. I had to drive back to Garage Center and Guitar Center, Garage Band, Guitar Center. I had to drive back to Guitar Center to ask them how to get the interface to work. And that's when I learned about drivers and that you had to download
and these
a
guys
driver.
don't know everything either. That's the tricky part too sometimes.
But I knew nothing. And they were like, you just have to download the driver for this. And I was like, what's a driver, you know?
Yeah.
And I just developed, like, I just clearly was having a pull. Like, the universe was pulling me towards vocals. And I think naturally you do have to have something within you to do it. Like, it is a balance of a natural gift and as well putting in the endless hours.
Yeah, the only thing that I feel like you could count yourself lucky for is having a passion for something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But the work, that's so important that you point that out. I feel like there's nothing like this. The work that you're doing right now, that stuff doesn't come from anything besides hustling, getting your skills up, just fucking doing it until you're amazing at it, right? And
putting in your hours.
Yeah. I mean, now that you're working with someone like Kuk and you learn from someone who's done literally that just for longer, how did you guys meet? He's, first of all, maybe you want to tell a little bit about Kuk. He's an absolute legend.
Yeah, he is
Some
a
of
legend.
the records, Rihanna.
He's definitely done everybody's favorite records.
And he started as a producer, right? Didn't he work with TLC way back?
He started with like his cousin Tricky Stewart,
right?
And then The Dream, and the three of them did.
Organized Noise were they part of that as well?
I'm not sure. I met Kuk so much later in life that it's like our relationship is kind of based off more like not all the things he's done from the past, which is kind of dope because we just have like a friendship of when we met. That's kind of where we started. And that was just 2.5 years ago or so.
Amazing.
But I would say that like it kind of goes back to what you were saying before. How did I get into vocals? Again, with like Sound Better, that was my focus. At Berkeley, vocals were my focus. I always just had like in my head, I love vocals. So I think again, it was the universe at the right time introducing me to Kuk, who is the biggest vocal producer of all time. And I, on my own, had already developed a passion for vocal production. And not even really, like, I learned about Kuk after I had already gotten into vocal production. So to me, it's kind of just like a crazy reality that
cool.
that I am where I am. Because I love vocals and I get to...
But that just shows that you're amazing at what you do, that like you were doing it either way. It wasn't like, oh, my goal would be to work with someone like this. It just happened because you're great at what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely doing like a lot of the projects that I would never have had the ability to get to so quickly because of him, for sure. But it's not lost upon me that I'm landed right here with the biggest vocal producer of all time as somebody that just found their way into vocals on their own, you know?
Yeah,
it's really surreal, actually.
That's amazing.
It's really cool.
Very exciting.
I separate like all the songs he's done from who he is, because then I would probably be too nervous around him all the time.
I feel that, yeah.
You know, because he's done amazing work.
Yeah. So when you work with an artist on vocal production with Kuk or by yourself, how do you? What's the communication that happens right before a session, or is the first time you talk to the artist just when they get in? How do you prepare yourself for a session?
Well, with Kuk, I do all vocal engineering side, no vocal production stuff. So, like, when I was doing work before I met Kuk as a vocal producer, with, no-name artists, it wasn't so much of a preparation, because it's like the preparation is all the time. I do every single day on the stuff that I do.
Often you probably don't know what you're going to get either, right? So it's just be ready for it
Exactly.
either way.
And it was great to have those people actually to like work on, to test my abilities with, because of the fact that no one was probably really going to hear that music, that it was like a great practice of like a legit setting, but it was a lot less pressure than what it is now. And as well, like my best friend Lillian, that you know as well from Berkeley.
Shout out to Lillian.
Yeah. It's like me and her co-write a lot together, and we have since 2015. And she has been like the person that I got to practice vocal production on. She was like my student in the sense that she would do whatever I said. Like not in a army type of way, but she would trust me. And she would trust that whatever I was asking her to do was what was going to make the record better. And we just developed that's as well what really drove me into vocal production, is working with her and loving that side of the demo process as well. Like I loved the writing side, but I loved the vocal production side of a demo, and not just the vocal production of the lead when you tell them to do a scoop, or where you tell them to say a word like this or a vowel like that, but like the backgrounds, the harmonies, the effects, like all of that type of vocal production stuff, which I learned is actually only half of vocal production, because the other half, which is probably the more important half, is just like the person-to-person aspect of it.
Yeah. So do I understand this right? As you said earlier, most of the times now when you work on a record, the harmonies might be there, even the backgrounds, maybe ad-libs, and you focus in on the lead vocal for the main part, right? So you mentioned that it's super important to you, or you really love working on demos where you also include all, like, where you have to literally come up with the whole vocal arrangement, the harmonies, ad-libs, all that stuff. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that and why you think it's really important to nail that part.
Well, I guess for a demo, it's a lot less pressure than this is the record that's going out on this artist project. It's hard. A demo is easier in some sense because it's the natural vibe that happens. Whereas when you're cutting an artist on a record, you're trying to recreate the natural vibe that the demo singer just did naturally. Because,
it's like, that's the one. We got to get that right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like the importance of a demo to me, it just, again, further helped develop my skill set as a vocal producer. So it's kind of just like everything you do, don't shortcut it, don't half do it, because we were saying before, nothing is really a waste of time if whatever you're doing is contributing to your skill set in the future. And just all of that stuff makes you more prepared for when you are in front of an artist, that you don't have to think about those things. You don't have to be like, oh my God, like what's the third of this, or what harmony? That's your ear. That's like just in you. So then you only worry about things that you don't have control over. And that makes it a lot easier in a session if you're like not doubting yourself about every single aspect, where you have the confidence in the areas that you know you can control, which is all the work that you've put in for the years prior to that gets you there. So that way you're only dealing with circumstances that you couldn't even see happen.
Like, what's an example of something when you feel like you don't have control over something in a session? Or
just like, if Pro Tools decides that it wants to be dramatic that day, Pro Tools is kind of a person in that they act up when they want to act up.
You got to be nice to Pro Tools.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't even explain why they were acting that way. They just decided to, and then you turn them on and off and they're all good to go.
Yeah.
So just like, technical things, basically, anything. Or like if the studio doesn't have something that you want, or just any kind, it's more so like technical gear type of troubleshooting issues, that would be all you would have to worry about at the end of the day.
I mean, that's most of as engineers troubleshooting, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's never gonna change. I feel there's always. We just had it with the stream. That's why we're a few minutes late, because the camera was acting up.
Right.
I mean, that stuff happens every day, and it's just how do you troubleshoot? How do you make sure you keep the vibe in a session?
Right.
The artist might notice, but you kind of try to not have the artist notice what's going on. Like, do you have any advice for young engineers how to go about stuff when it doesn't work?
When it doesn't work, I mean, you figure out how to make it work is the best advice.
Yes.
But you can all, like, as long as you have the essentials, and like the right person is behind the computer and the right person behind the mic, you can make anything work. You know, if you don't have exactly the right plugins that you want, that you're used to, you know, you just put a different EQ on, like, and you do your same type of adjustments, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you try not to let them see you freaking out, of course, if you are freaking out. But I would say, like, the best thing is to not let yourself get to that point to begin with, which is something you practice. Like, I definitely used to be, as a female in this audio world, and I still am, very, very hard on myself. And if I make a mistake, or if I'm not sure of something, or if there's something I have to fix, like, I used to get very anxious about it because I didn't want to fail as a woman in front of people. You know, like, I didn't want to give girls a bad reputation, like, oh, well, this is why you don't see that many girls engineering, is because of that. So
that's a lot of pressure to
it's
carry,
a lot of pressure that I put on myself more than anything.
Yeah.
And it's a practice to learn to just be a little more confident in yourself. Kuk told me when he met me that I'm about to be 31. So he told me when he met me when I was 28 that I was too old not to be confident in myself.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. That's cool.
And I was like, damn, like, you just call me old, but that's not. I am too old to not be. But in the best way. Yeah, like, I'm kind of too old to not be confident in what I'm doing, for sure. And ever since then, it's like being behind somebody that is that amazing, and like knowing they trust you automatically gives you more confidence and belief in yourself.
Yes.
And you kind of just take that and run with it. And it's like, it always goes back to putting in the hard work. And as long as you're always doing that and pushing, like, not settling for anything less than that, you develop your skills.
Yeah. And with, like, having done this for such a long time, and I'm sure you've messed around with a bunch of different setups, different microphones, different EQs, compressors. I mean, I know from our previous conversation that your setup is pretty streamlined, that you guys just keep it simple for the most part, right? Maybe you want to elaborate on why that is, and what do you think the simplicity of a setup brings to a session? I think that could be interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, well, for me, I would say that because so much of my work, like, I'm an in-the-box girl. Solely because of access. My first years out here in LA, I didn't have access to crazy studios, and unless the client booked it, but a lot of times they were coming to my apartment.
Yeah.
You know, like, I had just my Apollo. I have a Neumann mic that's
Sick.
TLM 49, which
Great
is
mic.
Not even
it's a good
greatest mic.
It's good, though. It's
no outboard gear, my laptop, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, that's all I needed to get anything done. I would send stuff out, and my friend from Berkeley, Anthony, who works at Patrick in Atlanta, he would always be like, how do you get that awful microphone to sound like that?
Wow.
When I had a AKG Perception, which is like a $99 mic.
Yeah.
That was my first mic.
So what was your approach? Did you A/B a lot? Are you just having amazing taste where you were like, I mean, that's really interesting.
You have to know what you want, what you're looking for, and then you try your best to make it sound like that.
So you have like a reference sound in your head of, if I hear some, I don't know, a dude singing who has like a lower voice, do you associate it with another singer where you, like, if you never recorded that guy and you, like, how do you picture the best version of that vocal and then get that?
It's, again, like, for me, it's just knowing what vocals should sound like. And if you know that, then you just have to figure out, okay, if that's how it's supposed to sound, how do I make it sound like that?
Yes.
So for me, it's always like, okay, I just know that that's too much low end, that's too much harshness, that's too much crispiness, that's too much this. And you just, subtly move stuff around as you record them. And for every person, EQ is going to be different. From the same person, from song to song, the EQ can be different.
Right.
Room to room, whatever, like section to section, pre-chorus to chorus could be different.
Yeah.
And it's literally that you have to understand what things should be, and then you constantly work towards being able to do that in a much faster, easier, less of a headache way.
Yeah.
And that's where all the time and the hours come in to play.
That's a very impressive skill to hear someone sing for the first time and then knowing where that could end up and working towards that. I think that's amazing. I feel a lot of producers that work on like full records, the most difficult part is always the vocal, right? And that's also the most important part of the song.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Like that's talking to peers, talking to friends who mix records, produce records. That's always the thing where it's like, man, I wish the vocals were recorded better, or I wish the vocals were produced better. Do you have maybe a couple of tips that you could give to people that don't do that on the daily basis?
On the daily, yeah, for sure. I mean, listening to all your favorite songs and like, unfortunately, I'm still in the phase of life where I have a hard time enjoying the music on the radio or of my favorite artists because I'm constantly analyzing it. I'm like, okay, the EQ on that, the delay on that, the reverb, the double they did there, the harmony they did there. Even going into the beat, I'm analyzing it, which I don't do like music production aspects.
But still, it informs what you do as a vocal producer.
Yeah. But I'm always analyzing. And I think that I would love to get to a place where I could listen to music and enjoy it. Like, I actually only listen to jazz music if I listen to it because I have no idea what's going on. So
and there's no vocals in it
there's
often.
most of the time, But I have no idea what they're doing. So it's hard for me to analyze anything.
Yeah.
And then I could just sit and enjoy it. I want to get to that point with modern music or like the music that's on the radio. But
Do you feel you get there ever?
I think so, because that's a lot of the professionals. Like Susan Rogers from Berkeley. I remember her saying that. She said, like, eventually you'll get to that point.
Oh, cool, okay.
So I'm still waiting.
It's like a cycle almost, right? When you're like a kid or a teenager, you listen to music for music. You don't think in an analytic way.
Right.
And you get into it. You see how the sausage is being made.
Yeah.
And then you see all the stuff, or you hear all the things that are poking out, or you're curious of why does it sound that way. And
exactly.
And full circle, you're back to enjoying
it, maybe. And so I would say, like, for people out there, for tips, it would be for sure understand, first off, what it needs to sound like. And then just mess around. Like, have the same session and just mess around with that vocal, like, until you start to notice. And a lot of, like, huge, dramatic boosts, just to, like, know what sounds come out at certain frequencies, just to teach yourself, like, okay, if I'm boosting it at 10K plus, like, this is what it's going to sound like. If I'm, of course, 250-ish muddiness, you test out what that sounds like by boosting it so that you know what you're trying to cut.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of drastic cues and, like, making it super narrow and super drastic and just like sweep along because I didn't know where the frequency I didn't like was coming from.
Yeah.
So I had to, and again, I didn't have a teacher at this point in time.
So it's like trial and error.
So I just had to figure out, like, by a super narrow situation, sweeping it across, and I'll be like, oh, that's that thing that I don't like, And then eventually you get quicker and faster. And as well, I don't claim to be a mixer at all. Like, rough mixes all the way, but I'm not
but you're the one delivering the vocal that ends up on hit records.
I mean, the sessions, luckily with Kuk, the sessions that I'm given sound amazing.
I'm sure,
given to me.
I'm sure, but then also with that, there comes this responsibility to know when
to not mess it up.
Yeah, like when do you overcook something? I feel like a lot of, especially with vocal production, a lot of files that I personally got delivered, sometimes the vocals are really overcooked. There's like really heavy processing on it, and you don't really, like, you gotta try to fix the vocal before you even can start mixing it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something you could elaborate on too. how much do you do on something that you deliver when you send out the vocal to the mixer? Or I don't know, who do you send the vocals out to first of all? Is it the mixer, or is it the label or the artist?
It depends every time, it's different. But I would say that for me, like when I was doing Sound Better work, I did half of it, I would say, was in-person stuff, and the other half was files being sent to me, and then I would send stuff back.
Cool.
So that's where I really developed learning how to make stems, learning that, like at first I didn't really realize like, oh, maybe there's a better way to consolidate tracks and send them this way instead of sending them how I am. And you like, when people come back and ask you, oh, can I have this dry or this unprocessed, this wet? You kind of like, that's literally how I learned even what sending files were. And I did a lot of sending files that way, and I always made it a key thing to just have it look extremely clean. Like, I always wanted every track to be the same length, the audio clip to be the same length, all consolidated. You do all your crossfades and consolidate the tracks so that way there's no questions of anything getting nudged and moved around, too, after the fact. And so I was very big on it looking extremely clean. And that's kind of what I took into working with Kuk as well. Like, that's when I clean up a session after. It's just, like you said, don't mess up anything that they've done. If he asks me to do any tweaks, that's the tweaks that I should be doing. And if he doesn't, then that means that I don't need to tweak those things, and I'm just there to do what I normally do.
With tweaks, do you mean tuning as well, or?
Yeah, like I melodyne a lot for him. So with him, he'll let me know what songs he wants it on, what songs he doesn't want it on.
Cool.
And then cleaning up sessions after the fact, like
doing fades, making sure
right, exactly.
There's no pops or
noise.
clicks, or...
Yeah, like if there's noise, like if you hear the music through the headphone, through breaks of like sentences, just like cutting all that stuff out. Making sure all the crossfades are clean, because crossfades can be, there are some tough crossfades.
I know, yeah. You don't want to hear a comp. Like, that's also very important, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he takes care of that for sure.
Cool.
But yeah, just cleaning everything up so that way when the person on the other side opens it, there's no questions they want to ask. And that's easier for you at the end of the day, because it's like, okay,
and you don't get a phone call that's like, what's up with that vocal?
Yeah, like they don't need anything else most of the time after the fact if you just do it right the first time. And I've gotten sent stems that are incorrect. And like, not to say anything, but they're always from guys, not the incorrect ones, nor just in general, what is sent our way or my way is from a guy. So when I get these mess ups, I'm like, I put myself in the position as a girl. I'm like, I would never want to send incorrect stems to somebody and it ever be like, well, a girl sent them. Yeah. So I double check, triple check my work.
That's amazing. I feel like woman or man, everyone should have that mindset when it gets you, like, you send something out, you want someone else to touch whatever you work on, make sure you deliver it in the way that you would want to receive it, or maybe even if your standard for that is not too high, go higher, right? Do everything you can. It's all part of the process to just, I mean, if everyone just works to the maximum potential, then
no shortcuts.
Yeah.
Just like, I'll literally, once I've bounced all my stems out or printed them, whatever, exported them into the folder, I'll then recheck everything by the space, like just in my Mac Finder in that window. And I'll press the space bar and just like quickly scan through each thing and just make sure
it's right.
It doesn't have any effects on it. Make sure that's the right part. There's no overlapping. Like, with sends and stuff, or if you're routing things in a certain way, it can be very easy to have something that you didn't realize happen, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just double checking and triple checking your work is really kind of important.
That's awesome. I mean, that's great advice, and it's also should be understood to do that, right? But unfortunately, it's not as great that you're particular about those
But
things.
I would say, like, of course, there are so many people out there that are way more into this industry than even I am still. Like, I'm still very fresh to, like, the pro level of this industry. That, there's so many people out there that do everything that I do, even greater and better. But it's just being aware of of what is the highest level is so crucial. So like what you're trying to do and compete with, or not compete with, but stand next to.
Yeah.
And hang with.
It seems like that's a thread through how you approach things, right? When you record vocals, you say be aware of how it should sound or how it can sound.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a kind of a through theme that you just be aware of the level of excellence that's out there if you want to compete with that, right?
Be aware of everything. Like, be aware of what your role is in the room with whoever is around. Like, as an engineer in these rooms that I'm like so blessed to be able to get into with Kuk, I am understanding that like I'm not lucky, but like I'm not the star in the room. Like that's not my time to shine. That's not this isn't my anything. I'm just there to learn, you know, and like soak up as much as I can around greatness, you know.
And it sounds like you're doing an amazing job with also being a safety net for Kuk with that stuff, right? Like making sure that the technical things work, making sure that the session is going smooth. That's a huge responsibility to hold as well, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with him is he is completely self-sufficient. Like, he could do everything on his own.
Sure.
It's just more so, like, at this point in life, like, does he want to prep sessions?
Yeah.
Does he want to do the cleaning up of stuff? He is, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but that's also, I'm sure there's a lot of responsibility being handed down to you with these things because they're very important to the outcome of a record or a vocal recording session.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I mean, I'm sure he can do all the stuff he did at some point.
Right.
Right. So it's amazing that there is this extended trust.
For sure.
For you to do these things.
Yeah. And the respect level that I have for him, just like I always want to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
You know, and like I just at the end of the day, like who I'm trying to make proud of my work is of course myself, but him before even the artist, because, you know, he's the person I look up to so much as a vocal producer that I'm like, if I can make him proud, like that's my main goal. And that obviously always makes the artist happy because he has the highest standard, you know?
That's amazing. Great. So if a young person is watching this and they want to get into music and particularly into recording or becoming an engineer, what is the main thing you would tell them aside from what you said earlier? Obviously, put in the work, hustle, do it. What else advice can you give with like?
Just like make the decision that that's what you want. Like, you know, for me, it was an easy decision. I knew from the second that I touched interfaces and microphones that I was obsessed with vocal recording. I never cared about music stuff, like beats and all that. I just was obsessed with vocal stuff. So you have to have a true passion for the thing, first of all. Like, don't just do it because you think it might be cool to do it. Yeah. Do it because you truly love it, because that's when you're actually going to, like, want to put in all the time and the work. And it's, like, you'll push yourself you'll be eager to learn and get better at it. So pick something you love to do, first of all. And then I would say teach yourself, like become self-sufficient. Every songwriter that's out there has been in a studio enough to have more knowledge than they know, because they don't pay attention half the time when they're in the studio. Like what I'm trying to say is there are so many songwriters that could know a lot more about Pro Tools if they sat there and paid a little more attention during their sessions. But they don't have to do that. But then they want to go home and they're like, I don't know how to record myself on a demo. Lillian is a great example of somebody that she needed to start learning how to record her own self for sending things out, especially during COVID. She uses my mic, the first mic that I ever had, the awesome. AKG Perception, and she's taught herself basic Logic skills. And she doesn't even know how to, like, get out of her front door sometimes. So if she can learn how to do that, literally anybody could. And I'm not awesome. Like, in an amazing way that she took it upon herself to do that. And so
she doesn't have to rely on anyone. Hey, can you record this vocal for me?
And nobody told her, you need to learn that. She took it upon herself. She was like, this is important to what I'm trying to do, so therefore I got to learn it. Awesome. And I think that's so people just need to kind of like take control into their own hands. Luckily, there's this thing called Google and YouTube, which I still use on the reg mid-session for troubleshooting. And there's nothing you can't look up and learn how to do.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's so true.
So buy an interface, buy a mic. It could be literally $200 total for those things.
Mm-hmm.
And, practice, research. Like, I've definitely looked at Google and YouTube for best EQing advices when I was doing Sound Better work.
Yeah.
Or how to literally, like, how to print something I didn't even know how to necessarily do fully. Yeah. So just practice, but love it. And that's when you're going to sit down and in your own free time, put in all the work,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that advice. So when you tend to look something up where you're like, I don't know how to do this or that, and you look something up, do you have any particular resources you tap into for that, or is it?
What's the one called? Is it
Gearsluts?
Yeah, Gearsluts really helps me out a lot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, there's some great threads on there.
Yeah, the threads in there. Sometimes you gotta dig deeper, but for the most part, and I'll have to dig deeper within Gearsluts forums or whatever, but typically they always, if I'll have to read chains sometimes and a long way down, but they typically always get it for me.
Yeah.
Or YouTube is helpful, but Gearsluts to me is kind of the best.
Okay, cool. It sounds also like that if you find some help or something, you're the kind of person who would try that and see for yourself if that's something you actually like or not, right? Is that correct? Or
yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of learn, once you learn how to do something, if you learn how to use one EQ, you can learn how to use all EQs,
right?
So once you know how to do, when you learn what a threshold is in compression, you just have to grasp what each thing is, and then you can, take liberties. Once you're aware of how things just work on a basic level, then you start to take liberties of taste or whatever it is that you're looking for on that particular day or whatever it is.
That's awesome.
But my plugin game is not deep.
I think that's amazing, honestly, because the market is so oversaturated with. We're getting told, you gotta buy this EQ, you gotta buy this compressor in order to sound like this or that. Or this mixing engineer is using this plugin, so I gotta get it so my mixes sound like that. It's so refreshing to hear that there's that is not at the priority up high for you for your work. That's not what makes the record sound the way it does. It's not what gets you the performance, right? It's not if I only had this compressor, the vocals would sound fire.
Right.
That's not what you care about, really, right?
Yeah, and I would say that comes from me, one, not having access to much outboard gear after going to Berkeley, which I didn't know how to use it at Berkeley. And then once I was aware of things, I didn't have them around me anymore. So it came from that, literally just not having things. And then as well, I would say that as an engineer, I'm not the most technical person. I'm not the most technical engineer out there. I have to learn things still to this day because I wasn't in studio environments for so many years. But I have, you don't have to have everything off the bat as long as you have the want to learn and the proactivity to teach yourself in those moments that you're not, I'm not exactly sure how to use that thing. Yeah. Let me figure out how to do it then. It's so much of it is just taking your own actions. Yeah. You know what I mean? No one telling you, but just choosing to take those actions.
Right. Find your own path, especially with the stuff I feel that's so important with equipment and gear and stuff like that too. Only if it's out there that this person uses XYZ, that doesn't mean that it's the right tool for you necessarily, right? You have to find your own sound with things, or people use things in different ways. So if you hear that person uses RVox all the time, is that the best tool for you to use? Then maybe try it out. See if it does, if you like how it sounds, if it gets the results that you want, right?
Right.
It's a lot of that, I feel.
For sure. And at the end of the day, it's like what you said. All those things are secondary to the source.
Yes.
And the source is, of course, the artist and the person recording the artist are the two sources for me. Because it's so important who's behind the computer recording the person as well.
Of course. Also, what's the vibe with the artist and in the room? you with Kuk, I assume by now you guys have a very, very good vibe together, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you hung around for that long, there must be a certain sense of familiarity.
Definitely.
You guys could probably talk to each other in a way that's
Yeah.
efficient, and no one gets really hurt by certain things, and it's
For
just
sure,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
goals are aligned, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You learn how the person communicates, and you just like, you get how things run. So therefore, there's never any talking about what are we doing, how are we doing it. It's like, let's
Amazing.
just go in and do what we normally and always do.
Yeah. There's one question that came up from Diamond District Studios from Johannesburg, South Africa. Shout out South Africa. What's the best way for a budding engineer to level up, and what to focus on mainly when starting out? I feel you're a great example of someone who specified on something early on, like it's hyper specified what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
I'll let you take the question from
Yeah,
here.
I guess, yeah, like what kind of engineer do you want to be? Do you want to be an engineer that's like mainly known for the vocal side of things? Do you want to be an engineer that is like, are you trying to work with one artist that's maybe not big right now and get in with them early on and come up with them? Are you trying to work at a studio? Like, are you trying to be a freelance engineer / vocal producer? You know, it kind of depends on what you're doing. But the leveling up situation, I would say you have to, first of all, be in an area that can allow you to level up. For me, that's being in LA.
Yes.
I wouldn't have had this opportunity if I was still back on the East Coast, for sure.
Yeah.
Part of why I have my job is because I live in LA.
Wow.
So being in the right location, and then like you just gotta hustle and work hard. Like there's no shortcut or there's nothing that beats that. Like that's the tale as old as time. Is work hard, you know?
Yeah, it's also the most sustainable way, I feel, right? If you can be confident in your skills, you could be thrown into any room with that skill set, and you swim. It's
and having patience too, and you know, Kuk says a lot, being real with yourself, like what you actually are capable of doing at the end of the day. You can want a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that that's the best path for you.
Wow, that's real. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I feel so fortunate that I never had a question in what it was that I wanted to focus on. When I went to Berkeley, I knew that I wanted to do vocals and songwriting and vocal production and vocal engineering. Like, I'm very blessed in that. So just hone it. Like, be really great at a few things. Don't try to do all of it. Don't be a engineer, mixer, guitar player, producer, beat maker. Like,
yes, that sounds like
you know what I mean? Which is a lot of people out here trying to do all of it. So I just focus on what it is that I have a gift of, and then I hone in on those skills. So you got to figure out what gift you have, you know?
Yeah. Did it help for you when you got positive feedback with vocal production, or was there ever a point where you were interested in different areas in engineering, but then it got reinforced by feedback? Or
I would say that I was lucky to intern at Jazz at Lincoln Center all through Berkeley. My dad's friend connected me with the chief engineer for SiriusXM Real Jazz Channel, Rob McCumber. He's like my favorite guy.
That's awesome.
He let me intern there. Like, he was recording big bands or live broadcasts of big bands or albums of the big band players that wanted to go off and do their own projects. Like, I was setting up for like 35 people, all horns, a lot of the times no vocals. And it was cool, but it wasn't like, I learned so much and I loved being there, but it never sparked me to be like, oh, this is what I want to do, you know? And so for me, that just kept showing me that I love engineering. I think it's so badass to do engineering. It's so cool. But I learned that vocals is kind of the only area that I want to mess with.
That's kind of cool to have also in that field the trial and error, right? Where you try, what can it be like interning for a production team? What can it be like?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you did as well, right? In the engineering for jazz records. Maybe that's also good advice to try different kind of things, even if you have a feeling you like something specifically.
For sure.
It might just strengthen that belief, right? That you know what you want to do, or you know what you don't want to do. That might also really help you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, interning was great. is a great thing for
Yeah.
people, you know, given the right circumstance. But even if it's a bad and awful internship, you should try to learn from all of that, you know?
I love that.
But yeah, interning was a big part of my life for sure. And that's where I developed a lot of my like reading the room skills, which goes back to our awareness point. Is like you're always reading the room. If I'm sitting there and I see somebody that has like a joint in their hand or something and they're looking around, I'm like, oh, they need an ashtray. You pick it up and you walk it over to them, you know? All those things. Not talking when you're not supposed to be talking. All of that kind of stuff I learned at Jazz Lincoln Center because it was a very tight run ship there. Like there was no messing around. It was like we had a great time like after and like, but when it came time for go time, he had so much pressure on him to record a big band like that, you know, and like all the setup and the huge 35 cables or microphones that we're doing, probably more, you know, it's very tight run. And so I learned so much about professionalism at 20 years old in that studio environment. For 4 years, I got to do that.
Wow, you did that for 4 years.
All through Berkeley. I would take
Amazing.
the Amtrak or the bus on the weekend, or if there was a show at Jazz Lincoln Center, I would head from Boston to New York.
That's amazing. That's a great way to learn about engineering.
Yeah. So it's definite, but like reading the room, like all those skills that you think people just have, you don't just have those. You really have to, it's a practice. Like it's a practice to become always available, but as well kind of invisible. Like, you know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it. Oh, what did he say? Always available,
but pretty much invisible.
Yeah. Did you ever work in the service industry, like in bars, restaurants, or stuff like that?
I feel like I currently work in the service industry. Like
Amazing.
literally,
Yeah.
we are in the service industry.
Yeah.
As the behind the scenes, behind the record, behind the production stuff, we are we service people, you know?
100%, yeah.
So you have to put your ego aside a lot.
Yes.
Like there is no such thing as ego in this realm that I'm currently in, you know? Like I'm not at the point yet to where I should even feel like I can call shots like that because I'm still so fresh to this game. And you like understanding that and respecting those that have put in all the time before you that have been doing this for years and years. And like, how are you going to think you know what they know?
Yeah.
You're there to be a sponge as opposed to push whatever your agenda is, you know?
Right. I mean, that's great that you can look at it this way. Also says a lot about Kuk. I'm sure that you look up to him. He's someone that you value his opinion, and that's makes it probably also easier to follow someone like that and like learn from someone if that's like a kind of two-way street, right?
Yeah, for sure. He is definitely like it's a total like again, it's kind of similar to the Jazz Lincoln Center situation in that like when it's go time, it's go time. Like we don't party during sessions like that. It's very professional. And it's honestly, to me, like, I love that aspect of it because it's like we're here to work and then we have fun and chill and hang or whatever it is. And it's not like a 15-hour day where most of it we were just chilling and
just fucking around.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't like those kind of sessions too much either.
But he's like one of the biggest things that I've learned from him is don't be lazy and just get up and do it. Like literally do it yourself. It doesn't matter what level you're at. Like you're never too good or too big to do anything if that's the way that you want something to be. And just, you know, I've learned so much through that alone.
Yeah, that's also great advice, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
He never lets his ego get in the way of what he wants the environment to be.
Yeah.
He makes it happen.
That's awesome.
Himself, you know?
Yeah. Was there like a particular moment in the last, maybe post-COVID, or where you felt super validated with your choice of being a vocal producer? Maybe an interaction with an artist, or like was?
Well, I would say that just not even just specifically being a vocal producer, but just like being in the right field of vocals. The fact that I am still working with the biggest vocal producer of all time that literally created what that term is.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the validation to show me
That's awesome. So
that I'm in the right place.
you feel that every day then, I guess. That's
Yeah, like
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sick.
Honestly, like just the fact that I still get to work with him, like, yeah, it shows that clearly
You're doing
I'm
something
showing
right.
up and doing what I need to do, you know?
Yeah.
And with him, it's been like there's room for growth, which is amazing. It's not like he expected, like, you have to have the basic everything off the bat. There's no way for you to be able to get into these situations and it's like you're trying to ask for selfies with the artist because your level of reading the room is that low. Like, you
Oh my
can't
God,
be
yeah.
that inexperienced.
Yes.
But technically, there were things for sure that I wasn't fully aware of that he allows room for growth as long as you're delivering in, like, the most crucial aspects. It's like there's room to always grow. And, like, he helped me learn so much about Melodyne and engineering and just like environment and vibe.
Yeah.
So much of that, which is nothing to even do with it's that all happens before anybody's even in the room with you.
Which is a huge part of the session too, right? Like before and after. That's what the artists don't see when they come in. Everything's set up, the vibe is cool. They go in the booth and they start recording. They don't see how much thought went into that in order to have it be frictionless and have it be a great experience. And then the stuff that you guys have to do afterwards to keep that process like that until you send out the vocals, right? There's so much that goes into it. So you said there was a base understanding of the stuff that you were doing, that you have or had to have when you started with Kuk. Is there one thing that you say, well, that's the biggest level up since working with him in that specific area? Is there one thing that you would say that's the most valuable thing I learned?
I think the most valuable thing, it's crazy. My dad asks me like every few weeks. He says every few months, but I swear it's every few weeks. Am I still learning?
Ooh, that's good.
And I learn something every day or anytime I'm in a session with him, or even not in a session and we're doing prep work or post work or studio work or whatever it is. Like, I'm always learning something. Like, I can't even say everything that I learn on a regular basis because there's, like, you can learn everything all the time. Like, always learning.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I learned from him, like I said before, is just never letting your ego drive you. And it's just like, what is the goal? And let me get there. And even if I have to do hard work to get there, that's what it's going to be.
Yes.
You know? I feel like that's the biggest.
That's huge, yeah. It's cool. There's like a lot of these, depending what areas we touch on, I feel like it's always the same core value that comes through. It's just really putting your head down, put in the work in order to gain confidence in your skills, right?
Yeah, and in order to get better at your skills.
Yes.
You know? It's like we live in a world right now where I'm tempted to like, could I become TikTok famous? Like, you know, of course, I know that's harder to do, but it's just like we want it easier. We want things faster. We want it to be a little easier. We want all the glory from not doing so much.
It's difficult in that time. I feel that there is a lot of seemingly overnight success showcased on social media.
Right.
Where either people don't see the work that went into making that happen, or sometimes maybe there is like a overnight thing where
but it might not last long.
Exactly. It's not necessarily sustainable, and it's like winning the lottery. That's not something you can bank on, really.
For sure, yeah. I'd rather bank on myself than like on luck and algorithms, you know?
Oh, okay.
Banking on myself will guarantee me something.
Yeah. Oh, I just got an update from Matt, one of our producers. He said it's not called Gear Slut anymore.
Oh, it's because of the whole...
It's Gear Space. Well, we were on that board before they changed the name, so sorry if we...
We're old school like
butchered
that.
Yeah. I don't know it as Gear Space, but it's Gear Space apparently now.
Okay, well, my mind plays tricks on me still then when I read the website.
I didn't know that.
It as that.
Thanks for letting us know, Matt. Appreciate it.
The whole women movement must have, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you think about it, it's a It's probably a good change.
Probably. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm just also curious to hear from you, what specifically are the tasks that you're doing right after the artist leaves? When does your day end? When does the project end? And what do you have to do until you can hit send on a link of the recorded vocal?
Well, so I would say like stuff I did prior on my own when I left the studio or when they left my apartment. A lot of the times I would, you can take a couple of days to edit stuff, depending on their time frame. Most of the time, the people I was working with didn't have a label telling them anything because they weren't signed to a label.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like on our own free time. But just getting it to sound exactly how you want it to sound is how you can press send on it.
Mm-hmm.
And until it's not in perfect, I use loosely in the sense that like there's a difference between perfectionism that I used to deal with of it hindering me to make progress versus it's perfect in that's exactly how I want it to be right now, like you have to really, I was in a space for a lot of years of it's not exactly how I want it to be yet, therefore procrastination,
Yeah.
not wanting to procrastinate, but just literally like I want it to sound not like it is and it's not getting there and it's taking a lot out of me to do that. But that goes back to your skill set. That was the days that I'm talking about were times where I was still developing it all on my own.
Sure.
So that was hard to maneuver. But once you get your skill set up, it's a lot clearer on, okay, what needs to get done, when it's finished from this point, and then it's ready to send. For stuff with Kuk, I'll clean it up, melodyne it if he needs me to, and
You do that the same day right after the session, or
depends on the time frame, depends on what we have going on. But in general, we have a very quick turnaround.
Okay.
We just, get it done. And he's an early bird, so it's like
That's
be
great.
up early, melodyning and sending files, which I actually prefer a lot more than late night working.
Me too.
And when he says it's okay, that's when it's ready to send. I don't make that call,
Okay, cool.
But I put everything that I can into it in order to hopefully make it, ready.
Have him approve right away.
But again, what the stuff that he sends me is like so pristine already off the bat that it's there's a clear direction of what needs to be done after that.
That's amazing.
Because it's not that much after the fact.
But I'm sure it's that's what we talked about earlier too when you were doing the Sound Better gigs. There's a certain starting point of a project and you take it to a certain finish point, right?
Yeah.
And the way that you describe it right now, it's still a direction you take it, it's just at a higher level.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. We were saying like where I was, Sound Better was great in that like there were some really, really bad people on there. And I was like getting impressed at my own before and afters. And I was like,
amazing.
and I was like, wow, like you can really make people sound good when they sound awful, So that's how I got my skills. Like honestly, people that are working, like try to melodyne yourself or whatever, like work on your own vocal. If you can make yourself sound good when you're not the best, like you can do anything. My sister is tone deaf, and for her birthday present, she did a cover of a Taylor Swift song. I melodyned it and added my own backgrounds, and it sounds like she can sing. It's obviously she cannot at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the distance that I would take those was so far and so hard, but like the end result was still not at the pro level to which I get to work at now, which is
because the source material was obviously different, right? So
for sure,
it's like this. I feel like with recording and production, for the most part, you can take a record only a certain distance, right? If the demo, like if it's a weak song, you can engineer the shit out of it or produce the shit out of it.
Right.
It's not gonna be a great song afterwards. It's what it is, right? So there's always that. There's obviously limitations to what you can do with the source materials.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, just take a bad vocal and see what you can do with that. If
That's great
advice is trying to learn how to get better at stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
Record your sister and then make her sound great. And she'll be so happy. Your sister, your brother, your mom, or your dad.
Yeah.
It's like
But they probably should also be aware. Maybe they shouldn't be an artist if it takes that much.
No, but you can at least, if you're like trying to get better at skills.
Yeah, I'm just joking.
Hey,
but the sister hears herself, I sound like Taylor Swift.
I could get my sister a record deal off of that song. No.
Side hustle.
Like literally tone deaf. It
That's
is it is a sense, a little bit of magic that goes down. Like that's what people refer to it as.
Mm-hmm.
It's not literally magic because we know exactly what we're doing on the other side of it. But when you don't see the other side of it and you just hear what it was first and then what it turns into, it seems like magic a lot of the times. But
it's like a very deliberate series of steps that you take with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. For us, it's like, it's not so much magic. It's just like, that's what you do to get it there. Yeah. But it appears as magic, which is why it's such a, like not everybody can do it.
Yeah,
know?
Most definitely not. Yeah, there's a lot of people, as I said earlier, I feel that's really struggle with vocals for the most. And it's so cool to see that that's a specific job you can have, is making singers sound the best version of themselves. Right?
Yeah, I'm super blessed and fortunate, but it also does feel universally aligned.
Yeah.
Like vocals has just always been something I love. So I'm so like, I didn't know it could be that I could get here. And of course I have so much more that I want to grow into, but I feel like I'm on the right path at least.
For sure. For sure. I feel it could be interesting, if you're up for it at some point, maybe to do a live vocal production session.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot. If not, that's cool
for
too.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that could be really dope for people to see how you do what we were just talking about. And,
yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
That could be great. Awesome. I think we're almost at time. Do you have anything specifically you want to talk about? Anything you want to tap into?
I mean, I would say that I don't know, like, what females or girls are out there watching this or watching anything, but I would say that the biggest thing that I would like to see happen is kind of just like everybody take control into their own hands, their own minds. There's literally no reason why, like, guys doing this stuff, girls, there's no reason why girls can't do the exact same thing.
I agree.
I think a lot of it is just actually taking the initial step to do it. There's not a lot of us to be like, oh, we do that. Like, oh, that's a natural thing that we do. Like, that's still evolving, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I would say separate your mind from like, I'm a girl engineer, as opposed to like, I'm an engineer. I just am also a girl.
Yes.
With that comes good things and like not bad things, but like harder things to mentally to get over. Yeah.
As you said, there's not a lot of female engineers that are in the industry. That's just a fact. There's a really disproportionate amount of dudes versus girls in the industry, and it's great that there's people like you for younger engineers to look up to as well. And that goes for like boys or girls. I feel it's very inspiring to see how you look at these things, how you got to where you are, and what your mindset is behind it.
Yeah.
I think it's super inspiring no matter the gender.
Yeah.
In my
I
opinion.
never thought I couldn't do anything because I was a girl. It was just that I wanted to make sure I was amazing at what I did, because I didn't want to make anybody think otherwise of us, because I know how capable women are, and it's literally just doing it is the only missing factor. It's not like capabilities, it's just getting into it. So yeah, like not so much separation between women engineers or a male engineer, just like more girls get into engineering and let's all be engineers.
Sick. I love that. That's awesome. On that note, hopefully you'll be back for like a live production session.
Yeah, your studio is so beautiful.
Thank you. It was awesome to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming by and sharing your story with us.
Thanks.
Can't wait to have you back.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.